Have you ever found yourself replaying a difficult conversation in your head long after it ended? Maybe it was a disagreement with your partner that started over something trivial, like who was supposed to pick up milk, and somehow spiraled into a much larger, more painful argument. Or perhaps it was a moment of tension with a coworker where a simple email was misinterpreted, leaving you feeling frustrated and misunderstood. We've all been there, caught in that uncomfortable space where connection feels just out of reach, replaced by a sense of friction and disconnect. It's in these very moments, these universal human experiences, that an unexpected source of wisdom can guide us, an ancient philosophy known as Stoicism. While you might picture Stoics as emotionless statues enduring hardship in silent solitude, the truth is far more profound and incredibly relevant to our lives today. Stoicism wasn't about suppressing feelings, it was about mastering our judgments and reactions to the world around us. And at its heart, this 2,000-year-old school of thought is actually a powerful guide for building stronger, more resilient, and deeply meaningful relationships. The Stoics understood that our peace and our progress are found not in isolation, but in how we navigate our connections with other people. They offered practical tools for managing anger, practicing empathy, and communicating with clarity, principles that are just as vital in our modern world of texts and video calls as they were in the Roman Senate. In this video, we're going to explore 25 specific Stoic philosophies that have the power to fundamentally improve every single relationship in your life. We'll move beyond the theoretical and dive into actionable advice you can start applying today with your family, your friends, your romantic partner, and your colleagues. This isn't about becoming a perfect, unfeeling person. It's about becoming a more present, patient, and understanding one. It's about transforming those moments of potential conflict into opportunities for deeper connection. So, if you're ready to discover how the timeless wisdom of thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca can help you build bridges instead of walls, then you're in the right place. Let's begin this journey together. Our journey into Stoic relationship wisdom begins with what is perhaps the most liberating principle of all, the dichotomy of control. This idea, central to the teachings of philosophers like Epictetus, draws a clear and unwavering line between what is within our power and what is not. In the context of our connections with others, this distinction becomes incredibly powerful. Simply put, you have complete command over your own mind, your judgments, your intentions, your actions, and your responses. What you do not have command over is everything else, the actions, words, beliefs, and feelings of other people. You cannot force your partner to be more tidy. You cannot make a friend agree with your political views, and you cannot control whether your colleague responds to your idea with enthusiasm or criticism. When we fail to recognize this boundary, we inevitably set ourselves up for frustration, resentment, and a sense of powerlessness. Think about a common scenario. You've asked your roommate multiple times to wash their dishes after using them. Each time you walk into the kitchen and see a sink full of dirty plates, your frustration mounts. You might try pleading, you might get angry, you might even resort to passive-aggressive notes. But if your roommate continues to leave their dishes, all your emotional energy is spent on trying to control something that is ultimately not yours to control, their behavior. The Stoic approach would be to radically reframe the situation. Your power lies not in changing them, but in choosing your own response. You can calmly reiterate your request. You can decide to wash the dishes yourself this time without seething with resentment, or you can initiate a broader conversation about shared responsibilities. The focus shifts from "why won't they change" to "what is the most virtuous and effective action I can take right now?" This doesn't mean becoming a passive doormat or giving up on setting healthy boundaries. In fact, it empowers you to set those boundaries more clearly. A boundary is about your own behavior. It's a statement of what you will do if someone crosses a line. For example, you might say, I feel disrespected when my time isn't valued. If meetings consistently start late, I will need to leave at the scheduled end time regardless. This is you exercising control over what you can control, your own time and your own actions. You are not trying to force the others to be punctual. You are defining your own response to their punctuality. This shift in focus is the key to peace. By pouring your energy into crafting your own virtuous response, acting with patience, justice, and courage, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a puppet whose strings are pulled by other people's actions and become the author of your own experience, finding stability even when the world around you feels chaotic. Building directly on the idea of focusing only on what we can control, we come to a philosophy that might initially sound challenging, but is incredibly transformative when applied to our interactions with others. Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is the conscious decision to not just accept, but to genuinely embrace everything that life brings us. Smooth and the difficult, the joyful and the painful, as if we had chosen it ourselves. In the context of our relationships, this means welcoming the disagreements, the misunderstandings, and the friction not as unfortunate interruptions to a perfect harmony, but as essential, even valuable parts of the entire journey. It's about seeing a heated argument with your spouse not as a failure of the relationship, but as the very fire that, if navigated correctly, can forge a stronger, more resilient bond. Consider the work of a blacksmith. To shape and strengthen a piece of raw metal, the blacksmith doesn't avoid the intense heat of the forge, they actively use it. They thrust the metal into the fire, understanding that this temporary discomfort is the very process that makes the material malleable and strong. The fire isn't the enemy of the metal, it's the necessary partner in its transformation. In the same way, the challenges within our relationships are like that fire. A disagreement about finances isn't just a stressful event to be endured. It's an opportunity to understand your partner's deepest fears and values around security. A conflict with a friend over a broken promise isn't merely a betrayal. It's a chance to clarify expectations, practice forgiveness, and rebuild trust on a more honest foundation. When we practice Amor Fati, we stop seeing these moments as things that are happening to us and start seeing them as experiences that are happening for us, providing the raw material for profound personal and mutual growth. This mindset is a powerful antidote to the slow poison of resentment. When we resist what is happening, when we mentally fight against the reality of a situation, we create internal tension and bitterness. We tell ourselves stories like, "This shouldn't be happening to me," or "My partner should know better." This resistance fuels anger and puts us in a victim mindset. Amor Fati disarms that entire narrative. By choosing to love our fate, including the difficult behavior of a loved one, we shift from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What can I learn from this? How can this challenge help me practice patience or improve my communication or set a clearer boundary?" This reframing doesn't mean you become a passive participant who simply tolerates poor treatment. On the contrary, it empowers you to engage with the difficulty from a place of strength and clarity rather than reactive emotion. You can address the issue not with the goal of eliminating an unpleasant experience, but with the intention of using that experience as a catalyst for creating something more beautiful and durable within the relationship. It transforms you from someone who is battered by the storms of conflict into someone who learns to dance in the rain, emerging not just unscathed but stronger and more deeply connected. Now, if embracing our shared challenges with a sense of purpose is one side of the coin, then the other side, the one that makes such acceptance possible, is the profound practice of empathy. The Stoics were masters of perspective shifting, and they developed a powerful mental exercise for this very purpose, one that can completely transform a moment of heated conflict into an opportunity for connection. This practice involves consciously stepping out of our own narrow viewpoint and making a sincere effort to see the situation through the eyes of the other person. When your partner snaps at you after a long day, instead of immediately reacting to the sting of their words, the Stoic asks a simple but revolutionary question: what might be going on for them? This isn't about making excuses for poor behavior, but about understanding its root cause. That sharp tone from your partner might not be about you at all. Perhaps they are carrying a burden of stress from a project at work that is threatening to overwhelm them. Maybe they are worried about a family member's health, or they're simply exhausted from a night of broken sleep. When we make the effort to imagine their background, their unseen pressures, and their likely good intentions, because most people are not villainous caricatures trying to cause pain, our own anger often begins to dissolve, replaced by a sense of compassion. We realize that their action is a reflection of their own internal state, not a final verdict on our worth. This empathetic leap is an act of taking control, as we discussed earlier. You are choosing to use your mind to reinterpret an event rather than being a passive recipient of its emotional impact. The Stoics took this shift in perspective even further with an exercise known as the view from above. This involves expanding your mental vision beyond the immediate conflict, beyond the walls of the room you're in, and even beyond the city. You imagine yourself rising up, seeing the entire country, then the continent, and finally the planet Earth itself, a tiny, fragile blue marble suspended in the vast, silent expanse of the cosmos. From this cosmic vantage point, you then look down and see your life, and the life of the person you're in conflict with. You see the brevity of your human existence, a mere flicker in the grand timeline of the universe. Suddenly, that argument over who forgot to take out the trash, or that perceived slight in a work meeting, is placed in its proper context. It is immensely small. This isn't meant to make our lives feel meaningless, but rather to free us from the tyranny of magnifying minor irritations into catastrophic events. It provides a liberating dose of perspective, reminding us that the love and connection we build are what truly matter, not the petty squabbles that can so easily consume our attention. So how can you apply this in the heat of the moment? Let's walk through a practical, step-by-step guide you can use the next time you feel a disagreement escalating. First, when you feel that surge of anger or defensiveness, consciously pause. Take one deep breath. This single act creates a crucial gap between the stimulus and your response. Second, in that pause, actively ask yourself, what is another way to see this? Make a genuine effort to construct a narrative for the other person that explains their behavior without malice. Perhaps they are scared or tired or simply misunderstood your intention. Third, if you can, briefly expand your view. Look out a window or just close your eyes and bring to mind the image of the vast night sky. Remind yourself of the scale of things. This isn't about dismissing your feelings, but about contextualizing them. Finally, from this calmer, more expansive state, re-engage. You might say, it seems like you're really stressed right now. Can we talk about what's going on? This approach transforms a potential battlefield into common ground, allowing you to address the real issue, the underlying hurt or fear, rather than just skirmishing over the superficial symptoms. This profound shift in perspective, from seeing conflict as a cosmic battle to viewing it as a fleeting moment, leads us to one of the most powerful and emotionally resonant Stoic practices for relationships, Memento Mori, which means remember you will die. At first glance, this might sound morbid or depressing, something to be avoided. But for the Stoics, it was the opposite. It was a vital tool for creating a life of immense gratitude, presence, and purpose. When applied to our relationships, this awareness of mortality becomes a gentle but constant reminder of what truly matters. It asks a simple, piercing question. If you knew that today was the last conversation you would ever have with this person, how would you choose to speak? What words would you leave unspoken? We so often operate under the unconscious assumption that we have an endless supply of tomorrows. We postpone the difficult but important conversation, assuming we'll have a better opportunity next week. We neglect to express our appreciation, thinking our loved ones already know how we feel. We hold onto grudges and nurse small wounds, telling ourselves we'll forgive them eventually when we feel ready. Memento Mori shatters this illusion of limitless time. It doesn't do this to frighten us, but to wake us up to the preciousness of the present moment. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This isn't a statement of fear, but one of incredible focus. It forces a reordering of priorities, where being right in an argument loses its appeal when weighed against the irreplaceable value of a shared connection. Imagine a couple having one of those cyclical arguments that every long-term relationship seems to have. It might be about money or chores or any number of trivial things. The discussion grows heated, voices are raised, and both people are digging in, determined to prove their point. Now, imagine if, in the midst of that tension, one of them were to briefly pause and bring to mind the fact of their shared mortality. The thought might arise, one day one of us will be gone, and this argument will mean absolutely nothing. What will matter is the love we shared. This momentary reflection can instantly dissolve the pettiness. The desire to win the argument is replaced by a deeper desire to understand, to connect, to heal. It creates space for one person to say, "You know what, this isn't worth us being upset with each other. I love you more than I need to be right about this." This is the power of Memento Mori. It serves as an internal compass, always pointing us back toward love and away from ego. This practice also inspires us to express our feelings openly and frequently. We stop assuming our partners, parents, or friends know the depth of our affection. The Stoics understood that verbalizing gratitude and love is a virtuous action in itself. Seneca advised, "Let us praise those who deserve it. Our praises will be a precious possession for them when we are no more." Think about the last time you told a family member how much you appreciate them, not just with a quick "love you" as you hang up the phone, but with specific, heartfelt words. Memento Mori gives us the courage to have those conversations now, to not wait for a eulogy to articulate the impact someone has had on our lives. It encourages the vulnerable, honest conversations that form the bedrock of deep, trusting relationships. Furthermore, this awareness makes forgiveness not just an option but a necessity. Holding a grudge is a luxury that presupposes infinite time. When we remember that life is fleeting, the weight of carrying anger feels unbearable. Forgiveness becomes a gift we give ourselves, a release from the burden of bitterness, allowing us to fully appreciate the time we have left with the people we care about. It's the ultimate application of focusing on what we can control, our own choice to let go and choose peace. This profound practice of cherishing our limited time with others naturally invites us to reconsider what we are actually seeking from these connections. This brings us to a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy that can fundamentally reshape our approach to relationships, the idea that virtue is the sole good. The Stoics, like Seneca and Epictetus, made a radical distinction between what is truly good and what they called preferred indifference. True good, the only thing that is inherently and always beneficial, is living a virtuous life, cultivating wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance in all that we do. Everything else that we commonly chase after, wealth, fame, comfort, and crucially for our topic, the affection of a partner, the loyalty of a friend, or the approval of a colleague, falls into the category of preferred indifference. Now, indifferent doesn't mean these things are worthless or that we shouldn't prefer them. Of course, we would prefer to have loving relationships. The term means that their value is not inherent. It does not contribute to our moral worth or our ultimate flourishing. They are indifferent to our character. We can live a truly good life, a life of virtue, even if we are alone. Conversely, we can have all the love and admiration in the world but still live a shallow, vicious life. The key insight for relationships is this: when we make a preferred indifferent, like receiving love, the goal of the relationship, we hand over our sense of worth and stability to something outside of our control. We become emotionally dependent on another person's actions, which is a recipe for anxiety and disappointment. Applying this to a real-world scenario makes its power clear. Imagine two people in a romantic relationship. Person A's primary goal is to feel loved and secure. Their happiness rises and falls with their partner's actions. If their partner is attentive and affectionate, person A feels worthy and happy. If their partner is distant or critical, person A's self-esteem plummets. They become anxious, needy, or resentful. Their entire emotional state is contingent on something they cannot ultimately control. Now consider person B, who has embraced the Stoic view. Their goal within the relationship is not to receive love, but to express love virtuously. Their focus is on their own character. Can I be courageous enough to be vulnerable? Can I be just and fair in my expectations? Can I act with wisdom and temperance during a disagreement? For person B, a successful day in the relationship isn't defined by how their partner treated them, but by how they themselves showed up. Did they act with integrity, kindness, and patience? This shift is liberating. It transforms the relationship from a source of validation, an external commodity we desperately need, into a field for practice, a gym for our character. Your worth is no longer tied to the relationship's outcome. Whether the relationship lasts a lifetime or ends next month, your commitment was to acting virtuously within it. That is a success that no external circumstance can take away from you. This doesn't make you cold or detached. In fact, it allows you to love more freely and deeply because you are not clinging to the other person for your sense of self. You can offer love without the hidden agenda of needing something back to feel okay. This is the foundation of a truly healthy interdependence, where two whole, virtuous individuals choose to share their lives, each supporting the other not out of need, but out of a mutual commitment to growth and goodness. You participate fully, you care deeply, but your inner peace remains anchored in your own virtuous choices, which are, as we learned first, the one thing always within your power. This brings us to a Stoic practice that might seem counterintuitive at first, but which is a master key to emotional stability in our connections with others: Premeditatio Malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic exercise in dread, this is a powerful technique of proactive mental preparation. It involves vividly imagining the potential challenges, setbacks, or even losses that could occur in our relationships, not to make ourselves miserable, but to inoculate ourselves against the paralyzing shock of adversity when it actually arrives. Think of it as a fire drill for the soul. By calmly walking through the scenario of a relationship fire, you ensure you know where the exits are, so you don't panic and make poor decisions when you see real smoke. The Stoics weren't suggesting we sit around anxiously obsessing over everything that could go wrong. The practice is deliberate, brief, and focused on stripping future events of their power to surprise and overwhelm us. For instance, before having an important conversation with your partner about a sensitive topic, you might take a few moments to contemplate not just the ideal outcome, but also a less favorable one. What if they become defensive? What if they don't understand my perspective? What if the conversation leads to a temporary period of distance? By visualizing these possibilities calmly in advance, you perform a crucial mental rehearsal. When you then enter the actual conversation, you are not caught off guard by resistance. Instead of reacting with your own defensiveness or anger, you can respond with the composure you practiced, steering the discussion back toward productive ground. You've already faced the potential evil in your mind and found that you can endure it, which allows you to engage from a place of strength rather than fear. Let's apply this to a very modern and common scenario: preparing to give difficult feedback to an employee. You've noticed a team member's performance has been declining and you need to address it. The untrained mind might avoid the conversation entirely, or go into it hoping for the best but secretly fearing the worst, perhaps an emotional outburst, denial, or even a resignation. This anxiety can make your delivery hesitant or overly harsh. Now apply Premeditatio Malorum. Before the meeting, you sit down and calmly consider the possibilities. You imagine the employee becoming upset and angry. You visualize them rejecting your feedback outright. You even contemplate the possibility that they might decide to leave the company. As you sit with each of these scenarios, you ask yourself a Stoic question. If this happens, what would be the virtuous response? How would I act with wisdom and justice? You might plan to listen patiently if they are angry, to present specific examples if they are in denial, and to wish them well if they choose to depart. By doing this, you drain the situation of its emotional volatility. You walk into the meeting prepared for various outcomes, which allows you to be fully present, calm, and constructive. The feedback becomes about growth and problem solving, not a personal confrontation you're desperately trying to avoid. This practice builds a remarkable kind of resilience. It teaches us that our peace of mind does not depend on everything going perfectly according to our wishes. We can desire a smooth, harmonious relationship while simultaneously being prepared for the inevitable bumps in the road. When those bumps appear, we meet them not as catastrophic failures, but as expected challenges that we are equipped to handle. This is the ultimate application of focusing on what we can control, our own preparedness and our response. Premeditatio Malorum ensures that when relationship storms arrive, we are not the tree that snaps in the wind, but the one that bends, absorbs the force, and remains rooted, ready to grow stronger from the experience. These two virtues, justice and duty, are so deeply intertwined in Stoic thought that they form a single, powerful framework for how we ought to relate to others. Let's start with Stoic justice, which goes far beyond the simple idea of fairness in a legal sense. For a Stoic like Marcus Aurelius, justice was a profound recognition of our shared humanity. He wrote extensively about seeing every person you meet as a kinsman, not by blood, but by the shared possession of reason and a spark of the divine. This perspective immediately dismantles the walls we build between us and them. When you interact with your barrister, your boss, or your sibling, the Stoic asks you to see them first and foremost as a human being with their own struggles, their own dreams, and their own inherent worth. Justice, then, is the active choice to treat each person with the fairness, kindness, and respect that this shared humanity deserves, regardless of whether you like them in that moment or agree with their opinions. This principle becomes the bedrock of every healthy interaction. Imagine you're in a team meeting at work and a colleague proposes an idea you strongly disagree with. The unjust reaction might be to dismiss it quickly, to talk over them, or to subtly roll your eyes, signaling your disapproval to others. The Stoic, guided by justice, would take a different path. They would pause and remember their colleague's shared humanity. They would listen attentively, seeking to understand the reasoning behind the idea. Even in disagreement, they would respond with respect, perhaps saying, "I appreciate you bringing that perspective. Help me understand your thinking on how we would implement that," rather than launching an immediate attack. This approach doesn't mean you have to agree. It means you honor the other person's right to contribute and you engage with their ideas constructively. In a romantic relationship, justice might look like making a conscious effort to see your partner's point of view during a disagreement as equally valid as your own, even when emotions are running high. It's the commitment to fighting fair, to never using cruelty or contempt as a weapon, because you recognize the human being across from you deserves your basic respect always. Now, justice provides the why, the foundational reason for treating people well, while duty provides the how, the specific, actionable expression of that justice in our daily lives. The Stoics used the Latin word officium, which translates to duty, role, or responsibility. Each of us plays multiple roles simultaneously. We are children, parents, friends, employees, neighbors, and citizens. Each of these roles comes with a set of inherent responsibilities. Your duty as a friend, for example, includes loyalty, honesty, and offering support in times of need. Your duty as a parent involves providing not just material security, but also guidance, patience, and unconditional love. Fulfilling these duties is not about blind obedience to some external rulebook. It's about acting with integrity according to the nature of the role you have willingly taken on. It is how abstract justice becomes concrete action. Consider the role of an adult child with aging parents. The duty here is complex, blending gratitude, care, and respect. Perhaps your parent is becoming more dependent and is resistant to help, a situation that can be incredibly frustrating. You might feel the pull to avoid the difficult conversations or to become impatient. But reflecting on your duty can provide clarity and strength. The Stoic would ask, what does it mean to be a good son or daughter in this situation? It likely means acting with patience and compassion even when it's hard. It means having the courage to initiate tough discussions about safety, not out of a desire to control, but from a place of loving responsibility. It means ensuring their well-being while still honoring their autonomy as much as possible. By focusing on fulfilling your duty virtuously, you transform a potentially resentful obligation into a meaningful expression of your love and integrity. The action might be the same driving them to a doctor's appointment, but the inner experience is completely different. It's no longer a chore, but a conscious, chosen act of fulfilling your role with excellence. The beautiful synergy between justice and duty is what truly strengthens relational bonds. When you perform your duties, whether it's listening to a friend in distress, meeting a work deadline for your team, or showing up for a community event, you are not just ticking a box. You are actively embodying justice. You are demonstrating through your actions that you see the people connected to that role as worthy of your time, your effort, and your care. This consistent, reliable fulfillment of duty builds an unshakable foundation of trust. People know what to expect from you. They know you are someone who can be counted on to act with fairness and integrity. This reliability is the glue of deep, lasting relationships. It tells your partner that you are committed to the duty of being a supportive spouse. It tells your friend that you value the duty of loyalty. It tells your colleagues that you respect the duty of collaboration. In a world full of unpredictability, being a person who faithfully and kindly executes their duties is a rare and powerful gift to those around you, creating circles of trust and respect that can withstand any storm. Having built a foundation of justice and a clear sense of duty, we must now explore the engine that brings these virtues to life in our most challenging moments: courage. In the Stoic sense, courage is not about the absence of fear, but the willingness to act rightly in the face of it. It is the strength required to have the difficult but necessary conversations that every meaningful relationship will inevitably demand. This is not the courage of a soldier on a battlefield, but the quiet, steady courage of a person who chooses to address a simmering issue with their partner rather than letting it fester, or the courage of an employee who speaks up about an unethical practice despite the potential for backlash. It is the virtue that allows us to translate our inner convictions into outward action, especially when that action is uncomfortable. This brand of courage is inseparable from its essential partner, honest communication. For the Stoics, honesty was not a license to be brutally frank or to speak your truth without filter. Instead, it was a disciplined practice of speaking the truth with both kindness and integrity, ensuring that your words aim to build up rather than tear down. It means expressing your genuine feelings and concerns, but doing so with a profound respect for the humanity of the listener. The goal is not to win an argument or to unload your emotional baggage, but to serve the relationship and the shared pursuit of truth. Think of it as the difference between wielding a sledgehammer and a scalpel. Both are tools of force, but one destroys indiscriminately while the other seeks to heal with precision. Consider a common scenario where these two principles must work in tandem. Imagine you have a close friend who has started consistently canceling plans at the last minute. The easy, cowardly path is to say nothing, allowing your resentment to grow while making excuses for their behavior. The brutally honest but unstoic path is to send an angry text. You're so flaky and unreliable. I'm done making plans with you. The Stoic path, guided by courage and honest communication, looks entirely different. It begins with the courage to initiate a gentle but direct conversation. You might say, I value our friendship deeply and I've missed seeing you. I've noticed it's been harder to connect lately with plans changing. Is everything okay? I want to understand what's going on for you. This approach frames the honesty within the context of care and concern. It comes from a place of wanting to understand and support, not to accuse. You are speaking your truth that the cancellations hurt you, but you are doing so with the intention of strengthening the bond, not severing it. The framing of honest feedback is everything. A powerful Stoic technique is to preface challenging statements with what we might call a virtuous intention. Before offering criticism or expressing a hurt, first state your positive goal for the relationship. For example, in a professional setting, instead of telling a colleague, "Your report was disorganized and missed the key points," a more constructive and courageous approach would be, "My intention is for us to present the strongest possible case to the client. I had some thoughts on how we could make the data in your report even more impactful. Would you be open to discussing them?" This simple shift changes the entire dynamic. The recipient no longer feels attacked, they feel collaborated with. The honesty is no longer a weapon but a tool for mutual improvement. Similarly, with a romantic partner, instead of saying, "You never help around the house," which is a global criticism, a courageous and honest statement would be, "I feel overwhelmed when I'm managing most of the household chores alone. I value us being a team, and I'd love to work together on a system that feels fair to both of us." This expresses the same core issue but does so by stating your own feeling, affirming the relationship, and inviting a cooperative solution. It takes courage to be this vulnerable, but this vulnerability is the very thing that fosters trust and deepens connection, turning potential conflict into a stepping stone for a stronger partnership. Now, let's turn our attention to a virtue that acts as the essential counterbalance to courage, the quality that ensures our brave actions are wise and sustainable, temperance, or the practice of moderation. In the Stoic framework, temperance is the art of self-restraint and self-regulation. It's the inner governor that prevents our emotions and desires from running to destructive extremes. When applied to our relationships, temperance becomes the quiet power that creates an atmosphere of stability and safety, an environment where trust can genuinely take root and flourish. It's the difference between a passionate flame that warms a home and a wildfire that consumes everything in its path. This begins with the moderation of our emotional reactions. We are human, and feelings like jealousy, anger, and fear are natural responses. The Stoic goal was never to eliminate these feelings, but to refuse to be enslaved by them. Temperance is the moment of pause between feeling the surge of jealousy when your partner laughs a little too long with someone else, and the decision to either voice a paranoid accusation or to calmly process the feeling and perhaps later discuss a personal insecurity. An intemperate reaction, fueled by unchecked passion, immediately creates an unsafe environment. Explosive anger, for instance, teaches those around us that any mistake or disagreement could trigger a volatile outburst, making them hesitant to be open and honest. Conversely, temperance allows us to feel the emotion fully without letting it dictate our actions. We acknowledge the anger, but we choose a measured response, a deep breath, a walk around the block, and then a calm conversation about what triggered the feeling. This restraint is not a weakness, it is a profound strength that communicates to others, "You are safe with me, my emotions will not harm you." This principle of moderation extends powerfully to our expectations of others, which is often the hidden source of our greatest relational disappointments. An intemperate expectation is one that is immoderate, excessive, and ultimately unfair. It's the unconscious belief that our partner should be our everything, our best friend, our passionate lover, our intellectual equal, our emotional cheerleader, and a perfect co-parent all rolled into one. We place the enormous weight of our complete existential happiness on their shoulders, a burden no single human being could possibly carry. When they inevitably fail to meet this impossible standard, when they have a bad day and aren't emotionally available, or when they simply have a different opinion, we feel a deep sense of betrayal and disappointment. But the fault lies not with them, but with the immoderation of our own expectations. The Stoic practice of temperance invites us to see our loved ones with clear, compassionate eyes, accepting them as the whole, flawed, and complex individuals they are. It means appreciating their strengths without demanding they be strong in every area. It means understanding that they have their own inner world, their own struggles, and their own limitations. By moderating our expectations, we free them from the prison of our idealized fantasy and allow them to simply be themselves. This doesn't mean settling for less. It means loving the real person in front of you more deeply. For example, instead of expecting your friend to always remember every important detail of your life, you can appreciate the times they do show up for you and understand that their occasional forgetfulness is not a sign of a lack of care, but a reflection of their own busy mind. This shift prevents the slow accumulation of minor resentments that can poison a relationship over time. We can cultivate this virtue by consciously practicing what might be called realistic gratitude. Rather than focusing on where a person falls short of an ideal, we actively appreciate what they authentically bring to our lives. We also benefit from diversifying our emotional and social investments, recognizing that it is unreasonable and unhealthy to expect one person to fulfill all our needs. Strong friendships, personal hobbies, and individual purpose outside the primary relationship act as a release valve, reducing the pressure on that one connection to be perfect. Ultimately, temperance in relationships is a gift of grace we give both to others and to ourselves. It allows love to be a source of peaceful companionship rather than a turbulent roller coaster of euphoria and despair. It builds a relationship that is not based on frantic need, but on a calm, steady, and chosen appreciation for the imperfectly perfect human being walking beside you. Building on the idea of tempering our emotions and expectations, we arrive at one of the most practical and immediate tools Stoicism offers for preventing conflict before it even begins: the discipline of assent. This is an advanced mental skill that focuses on the crucial gap between an event happening and our reaction to it. The Stoics observe that we don't react to events themselves, but to our judgments about those events. They called these initial, automatic judgments impressions. The discipline of assent is the practice of consciously pausing before we assent to or agree with these initial impressions, especially the negative ones we form about other people's behavior. It's the difference between being on autopilot and taking manual control of your thoughts. Let's bring this to life with a common situation. You arrange to meet a friend for coffee at 3 o'clock. 3:15 passes, then 3:30. You've sent a text with no response. The initial impression that floods your mind might be, "They are so disrespectful of my time. They don't value our friendship." If you immediately assent to that impression, if you accept it as absolute truth, your entire emotional state shifts. You feel anger and hurt. By the time your friend finally rushes in, flustered and apologetic 20 minutes later, you are already primed for a confrontation. The interaction is poisoned before a single word is spoken. Now apply the discipline of assent. In that moment of waiting, you notice the harsh impression arise: they are disrespectful. But instead of accepting it, you pause. You literally say to yourself, "I do not have to assent to this thought. This is just one interpretation." You then actively propose alternative, more charitable explanations to yourself. Perhaps their phone died. Maybe they got stuck in an unexpected traffic jam. It's possible a work crisis blew up at the last minute. You might even consider that they are dealing with a personal issue that's overwhelming them. By generating these alternatives, you are not pretending to be naive. You are practicing wisdom. You are acknowledging that your initial impression is just one of many possible stories, and it may not be the true one. This simple act of questioning your own snap judgment is a superpower for relationship harmony. It prevents you from attributing malice to what is often mere circumstance or human error. When your friend arrives and explains that their car battery died on the way, your calm, understanding response, "Oh no, that sounds stressful. I'm just glad you're okay," immediately deepens the bond of trust between you. They feel seen and forgiven, not attacked. Contrast this with what would have happened if you had assented to the first impression. Your cold demeanor would have put them on the defensive, turning their stressful experience into a defensive argument, creating a rift that could take days to heal. The discipline of assent, therefore, is not about being a pushover. It's about being a fair and wise judge of reality, giving others the benefit of the doubt that you would hope to receive yourself. It's the ultimate application of the Stoic goal to focus on what you can control, your own judgments, and in doing so, you prevent 1,000 small misunderstandings from ever blossoming into full-blown conflicts. This idea of pausing our judgments leads us to a beautiful and profound Stoic concept that can fundamentally alter how we perceive everyone we meet, the idea of the divine spark, or what the Stoics called the logos. This isn't a mystical or strictly religious term, but rather a philosophical one pointing to a universal principle of reason and order that runs through all of nature and, most importantly, is shared by every human being. The Stoics believed that each person possesses a fragment of this cosmic reason, this capacity for wisdom, virtue, and understanding. It is the deepest part of our shared identity, far beneath the surface-level differences of appearance, opinion, or social status. When we choose to see this divine spark in others, we are making a conscious decision to recognize their inherent worth and dignity, not because of what they have done or whether we agree with them, but simply because they are human. Imagine you are about to enter a heated political debate with a family member whose views are diametrically opposed to your own. The easy, automatic reaction is to see them as the embodiment of everything you disagree with, to reduce them to a label, a set of wrong opinions, or even an adversary. But the Stoic practice asks you to take a step back and look deeper. Before a single word is exchanged, you make an intentional effort to see past the political bumper sticker and recognize the human being. This person, just like you, is operating from their own life experiences, their own fears, and their own sincere, if, in your view, misguided reasoning. They possess the same fundamental capacity for logic and goodness that you do. This shift in perspective doesn't require you to abandon your convictions. It simply demands that you engage with the person, not the caricature. You are now speaking with someone who shares your essential humanity, which immediately creates a foundation of respect that can contain the disagreement without letting it escalate into personal animosity. This perspective is incredibly powerful during conflicts, acting as a potent antidote to the poison of dehumanization. In the middle of an argument, when emotions are high, it is tragically easy to start seeing the other person as an obstacle or an enemy. We might use dismissive language, roll our eyes, or mentally write them off. But when we hold the concept of the divine spark in our minds, it becomes much more difficult to dehumanize them. It reminds us that the person who is frustrating us is, at their core, a rational being trying to navigate their own path, just as we are. This doesn't excuse hurtful behavior, but it reframes the entire interaction. The conflict is no longer a battle between a good person and a bad person. It becomes a clash of perspectives between two inherently valuable human beings who have both, in their own way, assented to different impressions about the world. This subtle shift can drain the anger from your voice and replace it with a calm curiosity. Instead of asking, "How can you be so stupid?" you might find yourself asking, "Help me understand how you reached that conclusion." I genuinely want to see this from your side. This approach doesn't guarantee agreement, but it almost always guarantees a more respectful and productive dialogue. We can see the practical application of this principle in the daily life of a Stoic emperor, Marcus Aurelius, who spent years leading military campaigns against tribes he considered barbarians, consistently reminded himself in his private journal to see the humanity in his enemies. He wrote, "A black character, a womanish character, a stubborn character, bestial, childish, animal, stupid, counterfeit, scurrilous, fraudulent, tyrannical." But then he follows this list of frustrations with the crucial Stoic correction. But if the intellectual capacity is common to us all, common too is the reason which makes us rational creatures. If so, then the reason which enjoins what is to be done or left undone is also common. If so, law is common. If so, we are citizens. If so, we are fellow members of an organized community. If so, the universe is as it were a state. Even facing those he fought against, he forced himself to remember the shared logos, the common citizenship in the vast community of humanity. This mental exercise prevented him from descending into blind hatred and cruelty, allowing him to lead with a sense of duty and justice rather than vengeful passion. To bring this concept into your own life, try a simple reflective practice at the end of your day. Think of one interaction that was challenging, perhaps with a difficult coworker or an irritable stranger. Replay the event in your mind, but this time consciously superimpose the idea of the divine spark onto that person. Imagine them not in their moment of frustration, but as a whole person with a complex life, with loves and losses, hopes and fears, doing their best with the reasoning they have available to them. This isn't about justifying their behavior, it's about re-establishing their humanity in your own perception. By regularly engaging in this practice, you train your mind to default to a stance of fundamental respect. You begin to see the cashier who was slow, the driver who cut you off, and the relative who always says the wrong thing not as nuisances, but as fellow travelers, each possessing that same spark of reason. This doesn't mean you never feel irritation, but it ensures that your irritation is tempered by a deeper, more resilient sense of connection, making every relationship, however brief or complex, an opportunity to acknowledge the profound dignity in another. This practice of recognizing the divine spark in others naturally cultivates a profound sense of appreciation, which leads us directly to one of the most joyful and impactful Stoic exercises, the active practice of gratitude. While modern self-help often talks about gratitude as a vague feeling of thankfulness, the Stoics approached it with much more rigor and intention. For them, gratitude was not a passive emotion that occasionally washed over you. It was a disciplined, daily practice, a deliberate exercise of focusing your attention on the good that is already present in your life, especially in your relationships. It is the conscious decision to turn away from the natural human tendency to notice what's missing or flawed, and instead to train your mind to see and celebrate what is already there, abundant and real. The transformative power of this practice lies in its ability to rewire our perception. Our minds have a well-documented negativity bias. We are hardwired to pay more attention to threats, shortcomings, and irritations. In a relationship, this might mean fixating on the one critical comment your partner made while forgetting the 10 compliments they offered. It means noticing the single time they forgot an anniversary more vividly than the countless times they showed up for you. Active gratitude is the intentional antidote to this bias. By regularly reflecting on and expressing thankfulness for the people in our lives, we forcibly shift our focus from what's lacking to what's abundant. We move from a mindset of scarcity, where we feel we never get enough appreciation or support, to a mindset of abundance, where we are constantly aware of the love and goodness that surrounds us. Let's make this practical. The most powerful way to integrate this Stoic principle is through a dedicated gratitude journal, but but with a specific twist focused solely on your relationships. This isn't about being generically thankful for your health or your job. This is about pinpointing the specific actions, qualities, and moments involving the people you care about. Here's a simple exercise you can start tonight. Each evening, take just 5 minutes with a notebook and write down 3 things related to your relationships that you are grateful for from that day. The key is to be incredibly specific. Instead of writing, "I'm grateful for my partner," you would write, "I'm grateful that my partner made me a cup of tea without me asking when they saw I was stressed about work." Instead of "I'm grateful for my friend," you could write, "I'm grateful for the encouraging text my friend sent me this morning before my big presentation." This specificity is what makes the practice so potent. It forces you to slow down and recall the small, often overlooked gestures of kindness and connection that happen every day. You start to notice patterns. Perhaps your coworker consistently offers to help when you're swamped, or your child always gives you an unprompted hug when you get home. This active recognition does 2 things simultaneously. Internally, it strengthens your own emotional bond to these people, filling you with a genuine sense of warmth and connection. Externally, it primes you to express this gratitude aloud, which has a miraculous effect on the relationship itself. Imagine telling your partner, "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for making that tea earlier. It meant a lot that you noticed I was overwhelmed." This expression of specific gratitude is a powerful form of positive reinforcement. It shows the other person that their efforts are seen and valued, which makes them far more likely to continue those nurturing behaviors. It creates a beautiful, self-reinforcing cycle of appreciation and goodwill. The Stoics, like Seneca, believed that taking time to reflect on the good in our lives was essential for a tranquil mind. He wrote, "We should cherish and love old age, for it is full of pleasure if one knows how to use it. Fruits are most welcome when almost over. Youth is most charming at its close. The last drink delights the toper, the glass which souses him and puts the finishing touch on his drunkenness." While he was speaking of old age, the underlying principle is the same. There is profound pleasure to be found in appreciating what we have, especially when we consciously acknowledge its value. Applying this to our relationships means not taking people for granted. It means savoring the simple, everyday interactions as if they were the last of their kind. This active practice of gratitude ensures that we are not so busy focusing on idealized versions of our relationships that we miss the beautiful reality of the ones we are actually living. It grounds us in the present moment, deepens our connections, and fills our shared lives with a conscious, expressed appreciation that acts as a constant buffer against the friction and forgetfulness that can sometimes creep in. This habit of withholding judgment is perhaps one of the most immediately applicable and peace-giving practices Stoicism offers for our daily interactions. At its core, it's a humble admission of a simple truth. We are almost always operating with incomplete information. We see the outward action, the snapped reply, the forgotten promise, the cold shoulder, but we are utterly blind to the intricate web of thoughts, pressures, history, and emotions happening inside the other person that led to that moment. When we judge, we are essentially writing a story to fill in the blanks, and too often we cast ourselves as the victim and the other person as the villain. The Stoic practice is to refuse to write that story until we have more facts, and more often than not, to realize we may never get all the facts, and that's perfectly okay. Consider the modern minefield of digital communication. You send a detailed, thoughtful message to a friend about planning a trip together. The response you get back is a single word, "okay." Your mind, seeking to make sense of this minimal input, immediately starts generating interpretations. Are they angry with me? Did I do something wrong? Do they not want to go on the trip anymore? You might spend hours agonizing over this brief reply, crafting narratives of disapproval or passive aggression. The Stoic intervention happens right at that moment of interpretation. Instead of assenting to the first, most negative story, you consciously withhold judgment. You recognize that the data is insufficient, that okay could mean 100 different things. Perhaps your friend was in the middle of a stressful work meeting and could only type a quick reply. Maybe they were walking down a busy street and used voice to text. It's even possible they loved the idea and simply intended to elaborate later when they had more time. By suspending your judgment, you avoid creating an entire emotional drama out of a single word. You save yourself the anxiety and prevent yourself from sending a follow-up message that might accidentally escalate a situation that never existed in the first place. This principle extends powerfully to our in-person experiences, especially with people we see regularly but may not know intimately, like co-workers. Imagine a colleague who is typically warm and engaging suddenly becomes quiet and withdrawn in meetings. The judgmental mind might leap to conclusions: they're being rude, or they must not support this project, or they think they're too good for the rest of us. This judgment can then color your entire interaction with them, making you cold or defensive. The Stoic approach, however, is to see their behavior as a neutral fact until proven otherwise. Their quiet demeanor is not inherently an insult, it is simply a behavior. The reason for that behavior is a mystery to you. Withholding judgment allows you to respond with curiosity instead of condemnation. You might later pull them aside and say, "I noticed you were a bit quiet in the meeting today. Is everything all right?" This opens a door for connection. You might learn that they are worried about a sick family member, or that they are feeling overwhelmed by their workload and didn't have the mental energy to contribute. Your withheld judgment prevented a misunderstanding and created an opportunity for empathy and support. The Stoics framed this as an exercise in intellectual humility. Epictetus reminded his students that when someone appears to do you wrong, you must remember that they are acting based on their own judgment of what is good and right. From their perspective, given their experiences and their current state of mind, their action makes sense. This doesn't mean you have to agree with their judgment or tolerate harmful behavior, but it does mean you pause before labeling them as malicious. You recognize that your own perspective is limited and potentially flawed. This humility is a superpower in relationships because it replaces the impulse to blame with a desire to understand. It transforms potential conflicts into conversations. Instead of starting a sentence with, "You were so insensitive when you," which is a judgment, you can begin with, "When this happened, I felt hurt. I'm wondering what was going on for you in that moment." This shift in language, fueled by the internal practice of withholding judgment, is the difference between building a wall and building a bridge. It acknowledges that there are two subjective realities in every interaction, and that truth is often found not in one side or the other, but somewhere in the compassionate space between. This brings us to a principle that sits at the very heart of Stoic practice, a skill that transforms us from being passive reactors to active authors of our relational lives, the power to choose our response. The foundational idea here is that there is a crucial, however brief, gap between a stimulus, something that happens to us, and our response to it. Most of us live our lives on autopilot, allowing our ingrained habits and immediate emotions to hijack that gap. Something happens, we feel a surge of anger or hurt, and we react instantly, often saying or doing something we later regret. Stoicism teaches us to claim that gap as our own sovereign territory. It is within this sacred space that our freedom truly resides, the freedom to choose a response aligned with our virtues, rather than being puppeteered by our raw, unexamined reactions. Imagine a scenario that will feel familiar to many. You've had a long, exhausting day at work. You come home looking forward to a quiet evening, and your partner, who is also tired, makes a critical comment about the state of the living room or something you forgot to do. The comment lands like a dart. It feels unfair, ungrateful, and it hits a sensitive spot. The reactive path is almost instantaneous. Your body tenses, your heart rate quickens, and without a conscious thought, words fueled by defensiveness and hurt come pouring out. You retaliate with a criticism of your own, perhaps bringing up something from the past. The conversation quickly escalates from a single comment into a full-blown argument, leaving both of you feeling wounded and disconnected. This is the path of reaction. You were triggered and you followed the script written by your immediate emotion. Now, let's walk the Stoic path through that exact same scenario. The stimulus is identical, your partner's critical comment. The initial hurt feeling is also identical. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be inhuman and not feel pain. The difference begins in the gap. Instead of allowing that hurt to immediately convert into a retaliatory action, you consciously press pause. You take a single, deep breath. In that moment of pause, you engage your reason. You ask yourself a few quick but powerful questions. What is truly happening here? Is this comment really about me, or is it a reflection of my partner's own stress and fatigue? What is my goal in this interaction? Do I want to win a point, or do I want to maintain connection and peace? This brief reflection allows you to see the event more objectively, separating the raw fact, a critical comment was made, from the judgment you initially assented to, my partner is attacking me and doesn't appreciate me. From this calmer, more reasoned space, you can now choose a response, and your choice is guided by virtue. Instead of reacting with vengeful justice, you might choose to respond with courage and wisdom. Courage gives you the strength to be vulnerable instead of defensive. Wisdom guides you to address the root cause rather than the superficial symptom. So, instead of firing back a criticism, you might say in a calm tone, "Ouch, that comment felt a little sharp. It sounds like you might be having a tough day too." Is everything okay? This response does several things at once. It honestly communicates your feeling without blame. It demonstrates empathy by considering their state, and it invites a conversation rather than a confrontation. You have successfully navigated the gap. You didn't ignore your feeling. You processed it and chose a response that served the relationship and your own character, rather than being controlled by a momentary emotion. Mastering this skill requires practice, and it starts with building what we might call response muscles. Begin by noticing the gap in low-stakes situations throughout your day. When you're stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off, notice the surge of irritation. Instead of honking or yelling, simply observe the feeling and consciously choose to let it pass without action. You are training your brain to insert a pause between event and reaction. Another powerful technique is to have a pre-decided pause phrase for heated moments with loved ones. This could be something simple like, "I need a moment to think," or "let me take a breath." Communicating your need to pause is not a sign of weakness. It is a clear demonstration of emotional maturity and respect for the relationship. It tells the other person, "This is important and I want to respond to you thoughtfully, not just react." Over time, claiming that gap becomes a default setting. You begin to experience a profound sense of inner agency, knowing that no matter what someone says or does, your power lies not in controlling them, but in your unwavering ability to choose your next virtuous move. This is the essence of relational freedom. Mastering the art of choosing our response leads us directly to one of the most active and generous forms that choice can take: the profound practice of deep listening. In our fast-paced, distraction-filled world, listening has often been reduced to a passive waiting period, the time when we are silent only so we can formulate our next brilliant point or defensive rebuttal. But from a Stoic perspective, true listening is anything but passive. It is a disciplined, active exercise of attention and presence, a tangible expression of justice and respect toward the person speaking. It is the practical embodiment of seeing the divine spark in another, because when you listen with your full being, you are silently acknowledging what you have to say matters. Your perspective is valid. I am here with you. This kind of listening requires a voluntary setting aside of our own ego. Our natural tendency in a conversation, especially a difficult one, is to be preoccupied with our own internal monologue. We are busy crafting our argument, defending our position, or evaluating the other person's words against our own judgments. This is listening to reply, and it creates a barrier to genuine understanding. The Stoic art of listening, by contrast, is listening to understand. It demands that we quiet our own internal noise and create a space of receptive silence within ourselves, not as an empty void, but as a vessel ready to be filled with the other person's reality. This is an act of immense courage and humility, because it means temporarily surrendering the need to be right, to be seen, or to have the final word. It is a gift of your complete attention, one of the most valuable things you can ever offer another human being. The benefits of this practice for resolving conflict and building trust cannot be overstated. Think about a time you were truly upset and tried to explain yourself to someone who immediately started offering solutions or, worse, explaining why you shouldn't feel the way you do. It likely made you feel dismissed and more alone in your experience. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine expressing a concern to your partner, and instead of interrupting or preparing a defense, they simply listen. They maintain eye contact, they nod to show they are following, and when you finish, they might even say, "So what I'm hearing is that you felt ignored when I started looking at my phone during dinner. Is that right?" This simple act of reflection, of ensuring they have accurately received your message, is transformative. It communicates that your goal is mutual understanding, not victory. The person speaking feels heard and valued, which immediately de-escalates emotions. The conflict ceases to be a battle and starts to become a collaborative problem-solving session. Trust is built in these moments because trust is rooted in the feeling of being safe, seen, and understood. To cultivate this skill, we can adopt a simple but powerful technique often used in mediation and counseling: reflective listening. The next time a loved one is sharing something important with you, make a conscious effort to follow these steps. First, give them your full physical attention. Put away your phone, turn off the television, and face them. Second, as they speak, resist the urge to interrupt, even with well-intentioned advice or reassuring phrases. Your sole job is to absorb. Third, once they have finished, pause for a moment to collect your thoughts. Then reflect back to them the core of what you heard, not by parroting their words, but by summarizing the essential meaning and emotion. You could say, "It sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed because the project deadlines were moved up and you're worried about letting the team down." This reflection does two things. It confirms for the speaker that their message was received accurately, and it gives them a chance to clarify if it wasn't. It ensures that both parties are on the same page before any response is ever given. This practice turns a conversation from a potential debate into a bridge of empathy, where true connection and resolution become possible. This profound ability to listen and understand paves the way for perhaps the most compassionate and liberating Stoic practice of all: the radical acceptance of imperfection. This philosophy is deeply rooted in the Stoic principle of living in accordance with nature, and central to that is accepting human nature itself, which is, by its very design, imperfect. The Stoics observed the world with clear eyes, recognizing that just as a rose has thorns and a beautiful coastline experiences eroding waves, human beings are a mixture of reason and error, virtue and vice. To expect flawlessness from ourselves or from anyone else is to wage a futile war against reality itself, a battle that guarantees a life of simmering frustration and disappointment. Accepting imperfection is not a lowering of standards, it is a raising of awareness to see things as they truly are, which is the first step toward cultivating genuine grace and resilience in our connections. The relentless pursuit of perfection, especially in our relationships, functions like a form of quiet tyranny. When we hold an idealized image in our minds of what a partner, a friend, or a parent should be, we are no longer seeing the real, breathing person in front of us. We are instead comparing them to a phantom, an impossible standard that they can never live up to. Every minor flaw, a forgotten anniversary, a poorly chosen word, a moment of insecurity, is not seen as a normal part of the human experience but as a personal failing, a crack in the perfect facade we demand. This mindset transforms a relationship into a constant performance review, where love and acceptance become conditional on meeting these rigid criteria. The result is a background hum of criticism, both spoken and unspoken, that slowly erodes the foundation of safety and trust that all healthy relationships require. We become hyper-vigilant fault-finders, both of others and cruelly of ourselves. The Stoic antidote to this toxic criticism is a conscious shift toward grace and forgiveness, which begins with a simple but profound redefinition of success. Instead of measuring a relationship by its absence of conflict or its adherence to an ideal, we can learn to measure it by the quality of grace that flows within it. How quickly do we forgive a minor transgression? How easily do we let go of a perceived slight? How willing are we to assume good intentions even when the outcome is clumsy or hurtful? This is where the practice of accepting imperfection becomes incredibly practical. Imagine your partner, who is normally thoughtful, forgets an important date. The perfectionist script might immediately interpret this as a sign of diminishing love or a profound character flaw. The Stoic approach, grounded in the acceptance of human fallibility, would take a different view. It would acknowledge the disappointment while also holding space for the simple fact that people forget things. They get busy, they get stressed, their minds are elsewhere. It is a mistake, not a verdict. This shift allows for a conversation rooted in compassionate curiosity rather than accusation. You might say, "I felt a little sad that our anniversary slipped by unnoticed. I know life has been hectic lately, but that day is really meaningful to me." This statement expresses your own feeling without launching a character assault. It invites your partner into a collaborative space to understand what happened and to reaffirm your connection. The focus moves from punishing a past mistake to co-creating a better future. This approach is infinitely more effective because it doesn't trigger the other person's defenses. They feel understood and are therefore much more likely to offer a sincere apology and to make a genuine effort to be more mindful, not because they were shamed into it, but because they want to honor your shared bond. Crucially, this practice must be turned inward with at least as much compassion. We are often our own harshest critics, berating ourselves for our social awkwardness, our procrastination, or our perceived inadequacies as a partner or parent. This internal perfectionism is just as toxic as its external counterpart, creating a cycle of shame that prevents genuine growth. The Stoic acceptance of our own flawed nature is the foundation of self-compassion. It is the recognition that you too are a work in progress. You will make mistakes, you will act against your better judgment, you will have moments of weakness. This is not an excuse for complacency, but a precondition for sane and sustainable improvement. How can you possibly extend authentic grace to others if you are incapable of offering it to yourself? By accepting your own imperfections, you loosen the grip of the ego that demands perfection from everyone else. You begin to see your own stumbles and the stumbles of those you love not as catastrophic failures, but as the inevitable and even necessary bumps on the path of growth, the very raw materials with which we build patience, understanding, and deeper, more realistic love. This practice of accepting our shared imperfections brings us to one of the most beautiful and encompassing principles in all of Stoicism, the call to live according to nature. At first, this phrase might sound like a prescription to spend more time outdoors, but for the Stoics, nature meant something far more profound. It referred to the fundamental, inherent character of something, what it is designed by its very essence to be and to do. The nature of an acorn is to become an oak tree. The nature of a knife is to cut. So, what is the nature of a human being? The Stoics argued that our defining characteristic, the quality that sets us apart, is our innate capacity for reason, and just as importantly, our profound social nature. We are not solitary creatures by design. We are wired for connection, for community, and for cooperation. To live according to our nature, therefore, is to actively fulfill our role as a social being, to participate fully and virtuously in the web of relationships that sustains us. When we act against this core social nature, we create a deep and persistent kind of unhappiness. Think about what happens when we isolate ourselves, whether physically or emotionally. Perhaps after a hurtful experience, we build walls around our hearts, convinced that going it alone is safer. We might retreat into selfishness, prioritizing our own immediate comfort and desires above all else. Or we might succumb to cruelty, lashing out at others to feel a temporary sense of power. The Stoics observed that these behaviors, though sometimes tempting, always lead to a sense of unease and misery. Why? Because they represent a fundamental betrayal of who we are at our core. It's like trying to force a river to flow uphill. The effort is exhausting and goes against the very essence of the water. When we act in isolation or with malice, we are fighting against our own human design, and that internal conflict manifests as loneliness, anxiety, and a lack of fulfillment. We feel out of sync with the world because we are out of sync with ourselves. Conversely, when we align our lives with our social nature, we tap into a powerful source of meaning and contentment. Fulfilling this role isn't just about being surrounded by people. It's about the quality of our contributions to the collective. It's about being a reliable friend, a supportive family member, a fair-minded colleague, and a helpful neighbor. This is where our earlier discussions of justice, duty, and deep listening converge. Every time you choose to listen patiently to a friend in distress, you are living according to your nature. Every time you perform your duty as a parent with compassion, you are honoring your social design. Every time you act with fairness in a disagreement, you are strengthening the bonds of community. These actions feel right because they are in harmony with what we are. They generate a sense of purpose that transcends our individual wants, connecting us to something larger than ourselves. We can see this principle at work in the simplest of daily interactions. Holding a door open for a stranger, offering a genuine compliment to a coworker, or patiently helping a child with their homework. These are not grand, heroic gestures. They are small, consistent affirmations of our interconnectedness. Each one is a thread in the social fabric, and by weaving them with care, we create a life that is not only good for others but is fundamentally good for us. The Stoics believed that a good life, a life of eudaimonia or flourishing, was impossible to achieve in isolation. It is found in the virtuous exercise of our social capacities. The joy we feel when we help someone, the deep satisfaction of a long-term friendship, the comfort of being part of a loving family, these are not accidental bonuses of life. They are the very indicators that we are living as we were meant to. By embracing our inherent need for community and committing ourselves to the cooperative work of building and maintaining healthy relationships, we are not just following a philosophy, we are coming home to our truest selves. This brings us to a Stoic mantra that has surged in popularity for its sheer transformative power. The obstacle is the way. At its heart, this principle is a radical invitation to reframe our entire perspective on difficulty. In the context of our relationships, it means that the very things we typically try to avoid, the conflicts, the misunderstandings, the painful disagreements, are not roadblocks on the path to a good relationship. They are, in fact, the path itself. They are the raw materials, the very training ground where the theory of Stoicism is forged into the steel of lived character. A relationship without any obstacles would be like a sword never tested against an anvil. It might look perfect, but it would possess no real strength or resilience. Consider a common relationship obstacle, a recurring misunderstanding. Perhaps you and your partner have a pattern where one of you needs space after a stressful day, while the other seeks connection through talking. The clash is inevitable. One person retreats, the other pursues, and both end up feeling unheard and frustrated. The conventional view sees this pattern as a problem to be solved, an obstacle to the harmony you desire. But the Stoic, applying the obstacle is the way, sees it differently. This recurring friction is not the enemy of your relationship. It is the precise opportunity you both need to practice patience, to develop clearer communication, and to cultivate the empathy to understand a style of coping that is different from your own. The obstacle, the misunderstanding, becomes the way you learn to honor each other's needs. It becomes the way you develop a more sophisticated, nuanced language of love that can accommodate both the need for solitude and the need for togetherness. Let's take this a step further into more challenging territory. Imagine the profound obstacle of a betrayal of trust. The pain is real and searing, and the easy, understandable path is to let that pain define the event entirely, to see it as a catastrophic failure that has ruined the relationship forever. But the Stoic mantra asks a difficult yet empowering question. How can this obstacle be the way? It can be the way you learn the true depth and practice of forgiveness, not as a simple pardon, but as a complex process of releasing the poison of resentment for your own peace. It can be the way you discover the critical importance of boundaries, learning to articulate what is and is not acceptable with a new clarity and conviction. It can even be the way you learn profound truths about yourself, your own resilience, your capacity for pain, and yet your ability to endure and grow from it. The betrayal as an obstacle forces a reckoning that can lead to a relationship either ending with greater wisdom or rebuilding on a foundation that is far more honest and robust than the one that existed before. This philosophy transforms our role from passive victims of circumstance to active students of experience. A difficult conversation you've been avoiding is no longer just a source of anxiety. It is the way you practice the virtue of courage. It is the fire where you temper your ability to be vulnerable and honest. A period of long distance in a relationship is not merely a test of endurance. It is the way you learn the value of intentional communication and the depth of trust that exists independent of physical presence. Even a breakup, perhaps the ultimate relational obstacle, can be reframed. While immensely painful, it can be the way you rediscover your own individuality, the way you learn essential lessons about what you truly need and value in a partner, and the way you develop a self-sufficiency that will make any future relationship healthier and more balanced. The obstacle does not magically disappear, but its meaning is completely altered. It ceases to be a wall that stops you and becomes a mountain that, when climbed, reveals a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of yourself and a deeper, more authentic connection with others. Amidst all of this active engagement with others, practicing justice, offering deep listening, navigating obstacles, we arrive at a Stoic practice that may seem counterintuitive at first, the deliberate and essential pursuit of silence and solitude. In a world that often equates constant connection with a successful social life, the Stoics recognize that our capacity to be truly present for others is directly linked to our ability to be comfortably present with ourselves. This is not about withdrawal or isolation born from resentment. It is about strategic renewal. It is the understanding that to pour into our relationships from a place of abundance, we must first have a well to draw from, and that well is refilled in the quiet moments we spend alone. Think of your mental and emotional energy as a cup. Every interaction, even the positive ones, requires you to pour a little something out. Listening to a friend's problem, managing a team project, navigating a family gathering, each of these draws from your reserves. If you are constantly giving, constantly stimulated, and constantly surrounded by the needs and expectations of others without ever taking time to refill your own cup, you will eventually run dry. This is the state of emotional and social burnout where you have nothing left to give. You might find yourself becoming irritable, impatient, and resentful, even toward the people you love most. Your interactions become reactive and hollow because you are operating from a place of depletion. Solitude is the practice of stepping away from the pouring to deliberately and consciously refill your own cup. This practice of carving out quiet time serves several crucial purposes. First, it allows for essential recharging. Just as a muscle needs rest after exertion to grow stronger, your social and emotional faculties need periods of quiet to recover their strength. In the silence, away from the chatter and demands of the external world, your nervous system can calm down. The constant pressure to perform, respond, and manage impressions dissipates. This simple act of being alone with no agenda is profoundly restorative. It's not laziness, it's maintenance. It's the necessary downtime that allows you to return to your relationships feeling centered, patient, and genuinely available rather than frazzled and stretched thin. Second, and perhaps more importantly, solitude is the primary condition for meaningful introspection. It is in these quiet moments that we can honestly reflect on our own actions and reactions within our relationships. Think back to the discipline of assent, the practice of questioning our automatic judgments. That kind of self-examination is nearly impossible in the heat of the moment or amidst the noise of daily life. It requires a quiet space. In solitude, you can replay a recent disagreement without the pressure of an immediate response. You can ask yourself the Stoic questions: was my reaction virtuous? Did I act with courage and justice, or was I controlled by my ego? What could I have done better? This isn't about self-criticism, it's about self-improvement. It's how we learn from our experiences and gradually train ourselves to show up more wisely in the future. This practice of solitude is what prevents the slow creep of dependency in our connections. When we never take time for ourselves, we can unconsciously begin to rely on others as our primary source of validation, distraction, or identity. Our mood becomes contingent on their attention. Solitude breaks this cycle by reinforcing our self-sufficiency. It reminds us that we are complete individuals unto ourselves. By learning to enjoy our own company, to find peace in our own thoughts, we build an inner stability that is not shaken by the fluctuating moods or availability of others. This makes our engagements with them a matter of choice, not need. We are not seeking them out to fill a void within us, but to share the abundance we have cultivated on our own. This is the foundation of a healthy, interdependent relationship where two whole people choose to come together rather than two halves desperately clinging to each other. Integrating this into a busy life doesn't require a week-long silent retreat. It can be as simple as waking up 15 minutes earlier to sit with a cup of tea before the household stirs. It could be a walk in nature without headphones, allowing your mind to wander and process. It might be designating an evening each week as a personal night, free from social obligations. The key is intention. This is not wasted time, it is invested time. It is an investment in your own peace, which pays dividends in every interaction you have thereafter. By honoring your need for silence and solitude, you are not neglecting your relationships. You are, in fact, doing the most generous thing possible for the people you care about. You are ensuring that when you are with them, you are truly there, fully present, patient, and coming from a deep well of strength rather than a shallow pool of dependency. Having established a foundation of inner stability through solitude, we now turn our attention to a principle that safeguards that very peace from a subtle but corrosive internal force, the relentless hunger for more. This brings us to the 22nd philosophy, the vital practice of defining what is enough in our relationships. The Stoics issued a powerful warning against the vice of insatiability, the state of being perpetually unsatisfied, of constantly seeking more attention, more affirmation, more proof of love, more from others than they can reasonably give. This isn't about having healthy expectations, it's about a bottomless pit of need that can never be filled. A mindset that transforms our connections from sources of joy into arenas of perpetual dissatisfaction. This insatiability often masquerades as a deep desire for connection, but its true root is a lack of internal definition. Without a clear, personal understanding of what constitutes enough for us, we unconsciously outsource our sense of security and worth to the people around us. We look to our partner to constantly reassure us of our attractiveness, to our friends to validate our life choices, to our colleagues to affirm our professional competence. The problem is, when our emotional equilibrium depends on external validation, we are building our house on sand. People are human, they have bad days, they get distracted, they have their own inner worlds to manage. They cannot be a constant, flawless source of affirmation. When they inevitably fall short of our unstated, ever-increasing demands, we feel a sharp sting of rejection or neglect, leading to neediness, resentment, and a cycle of conflict that pushes people away, creating the very distance we fear. The Stoic antidote is both simple and profoundly challenging. We must take radical responsibility for defining for ourselves what enough looks like. This is an exercise in clarity and self-awareness. It involves sitting down in a moment of quiet reflection and honestly asking, what does a good enough relationship look like in practical terms? This isn't about settling for mediocrity. It's about establishing a realistic, sustainable baseline for contentment. For instance, in a friendship, enough might be defined as having a meaningful catch-up conversation once every 2 weeks and knowing you can call each other in a genuine crisis. In a romantic partnership, enough might mean your partner remembers important dates most of the time, makes an effort to listen when you've had a hard day, and contributes their fair share to household responsibilities. These are measurable, observable behaviors that signify a healthy, functioning connection. The crucial work lies in the distinction between a genuine need and a limitless want. A genuine need is fundamental to the health of the relationship. It's the need for basic respect, for honesty, for a sense of safety and trust. These are non-negotiable. A limitless want, however, is often an attempt to use the relationship to fill an internal void. It's the want for your partner to text you all day long to prove you're on their mind. It's the want for your friend to always agree with your opinions. It's the want for your boss to praise every single thing you do. These wants are insatiable because they are not about the relationship itself, but about using the relationship as a drug for our own insecurities. The moment we get the desired hit of attention, the high quickly fades, and we need a bigger, more potent dose next time. Defining enough is the process of consciously deciding to wean ourselves off this dependency. It's saying, my well-being is not contingent on my partner sending a good morning text every single day. My well-being comes from within, and the text is a lovely bonus when it happens. Implementing this philosophy leads to a remarkable sense of freedom and balance. When you have clearly defined for yourself what enough looks like, you can participate in the relationship from a place of abundance rather than lack. You are no longer hyper-vigilantly scanning for evidence of love or loyalty. You can relax and simply enjoy the person for who they are. If your partner meets your defined criteria for enough, they are generally supportive, kind, and reliable. Then any extra gesture of affection feels like a generous gift, not a demanded payment. This shift completely transforms the emotional dynamic. Instead of constantly feeling short-changed, you begin to notice and appreciate the many ways the relationship already fulfills you. This gratitude, in turn, makes you a more joyful and attractive partner, friend, or family member, creating a positive feedback loop that strengthens the bond. You stop keeping a mental scorecard of who did what, and you start experiencing the relationship as a shared journey rather than a transactional exchange. By defining what is enough, you discover that you already have more than you need, and that realization is the bedrock of truly satisfying and resilient connections. This proactive stance is the very essence of moving from theory to practice, embodying the principle of acting rather than being acted upon. So much of the frustration we experience in our connections stems from a passive mindset where we unconsciously wait for the other person to set the emotional weather. We think, "I'll be happy when my partner starts helping out more," or "I'll be friendly once my coworker apologizes for that remark." This approach places our own emotional well-being and the health of the relationship entirely in the hands of someone else, making us passengers in our own lives. Stoicism flips this script entirely. It challenges us to ask a far more empowering question: what can I initiate? What virtue can I express right now, regardless of what the other person is or isn't doing? This shift transforms you from a reactor into an initiator, from someone who is shaped by the relationship to someone who actively shapes it. Taking this kind of initiative requires a specific kind of courage, not the courage of the battlefield, but the quiet courage of vulnerability. It's the courage to be the first to apologize after a disagreement, even if you believe you are only partially at fault. It's the courage to offer a compliment or express appreciation without any guarantee of it being reciprocated. It's the courage to suggest a difficult conversation with the pure intention of clearing the air, rather than waiting for resentment to build. Each of these actions is a declaration of independence from the petty tit-for-tat cycles that can poison relationships. You are no longer keeping score, you are setting a new standard. When you take the virtuous first step, you are not being a pushover. You are demonstrating strength by showing that your actions are governed by your own principles, not by the fleeting behaviors of others. Consider a practical scenario that might feel familiar. You're part of a project team where one member has been consistently negative and dismissive of ideas. The group's energy is low and meetings have become something to be endured. The passive approach is to complain about this person to other teammates, to mirror their negativity, or to simply disengage. The Stoic, proactive approach is different. You would consciously decide to act, not be acted upon. Before the next meeting, you might prepare by setting an intention to contribute positively. During the discussion, when the negative colleague shoots down an idea, instead of getting defensive or silent, you could proactively say, "I understand your concerns about the potential hurdles. What if we explored a modified version of the idea that addresses those risks while still capturing the upside?" This response does not attack the person but engages constructively with their objection. You are taking control of the dynamic by injecting a solution-oriented perspective. You are modeling the behavior you wish to see, and in doing so, you become an architect of the team's culture, gradually shifting it from passive criticism to active problem-solving. This principle is incredibly powerful in healing fractured personal relationships. Imagine a rift has grown between you and a sibling over an inheritance issue. Months have passed with only tense silence. The passive stance is to wait for them to call you, justifying your inaction with the belief that they were the one who was more wrong. This waiting game is a prison of pride where both parties remain stuck. The Stoic, recognizing that the obstacle is the way, chooses to act. You pick up the phone and make the call. Your opening line isn't about rehashing the argument, it's a proactive offering of peace. You might say, "Hi, it's me. I've been thinking about you a lot and I miss you. I know things have been difficult, but our relationship is more important to me than being right about the past." This act of vulnerability is terrifying because it risks rejection, but it is also the only way to break the stalemate. By taking the initiative, you reclaim your power. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, you are an active force for reconciliation. Whether the call leads to an immediate resolution or not, you have the profound satisfaction of knowing you acted with courage and integrity, aligning your actions with the value you place on the relationship itself. You have planted a seed of peace, and that in itself is a virtuous success. This brings us to a liberating Stoic idea that can dramatically reduce the amount of unnecessary pain we experience in our connections with others, the profound realization that events themselves are neutral. It is not what happens to us that hurts us, but the story we tell ourselves about what happened. The Stoics, particularly thinkers like Epictetus, drew a clear line between an external event, a pure fact, and the internal judgment we immediately attach to it. That judgment is where all of our emotional suffering is born. In the context of our relationships, mastering this distinction is like being handed a remote control for your emotional well-being. You learn that you have the power to change the channel from a drama to a documentary. Let's take the exact example from the outline, a partner forgetting an anniversary. The event, stripped of all interpretation, is a simple fact, a specific calendar date passed without acknowledgement from your partner. That is the neutral data point. It is no different in its raw state from the fact that it rained today or that the bus was 5 minutes late. The emotional storm that follows the hurt, the anger, the feeling of being unloved does not come from the forgotten date itself. It erupts from the judgment you instantly layer onto that neutral event. The mind, seeking to make meaning, quickly constructs a story. If they loved me, they would have remembered. This means they don't care about me. This is a sign that our relationship is fading. This story is what causes the pain, not the forgotten flowers or the missed dinner reservation. The power in this philosophy lies in recognizing that there are always multiple stories we can choose to tell about the same neutral event. The judgment that they don't care is just one possible interpretation, and it's often the most personally painful one. But what if we consciously practiced generating alternative, more charitable narratives? What if the forgotten anniversary could also mean that your partner is overwhelmingly stressed about an impending deadline at work and their cognitive load is at its absolute maximum? What if it could mean that they have a genuine and perhaps embarrassing difficulty with remembering dates in general, something that has nothing to do with their affection for you? Or what if they simply have a different internal value assigned to calendar milestones, believing that love is shown through daily actions rather than annual gestures? By generating these alternative interpretations, we are not making excuses for the other person. We are practicing wisdom. We are acknowledging that our first, most painful judgment is not necessarily the objective truth. It is merely one version of events, and we have the power to choose a less suffering-inducing version. This is where the practice directly meets the discipline of assent we discussed earlier. When the neutral event occurs, the forgotten anniversary, you will feel the initial, painful impression arise, they don't love me. The practice is to pause before you assent to that thought. You literally create a space between the event and your emotional conclusion. In that space, you can ask yourself a few key questions. Is this interpretation absolutely and undeniably true? What is another, more compassionate way to view this? What facts do I actually have versus what am I assuming? This momentary pause is the difference between being a prisoner of your automatic thoughts and being the author of your emotional experience. It allows you to respond to the event from a place of chosen understanding rather than reacting from a place of unexamined hurt. Applying this objectively doesn't mean you ignore the event entirely. It simply means you approach it with clarity rather than clouded by distress. Later, you can still choose to have a conversation, but the tone of that conversation will be completely different. Instead of leading with an accusation fueled by your painful judgment, you forgot our anniversary, which proves you don't care about me. You can lead with curiosity and a statement of your own feeling rooted in the neutral fact. You might say, I noticed that our anniversary passed yesterday without us acknowledging it. I felt a little sad about that because that day is meaningful to me. I'm curious what was going on for you. This approach is non-blaming and invites a conversation. It opens the door for your partner to explain their perspective, which might immediately dissolve your hurt. Perhaps they reveal they've been planning a surprise for the weekend and got their dates confused. Or perhaps they apologize sincerely, explaining the stress they're under. By starting from the neutral event rather than your charged judgment, you create the possibility for connection and understanding, whereas starting from the judgment almost guarantees a defensive argument. This practice extends to countless daily interactions. A friend doesn't reply to your text message. The neutral event, no reply was received. The painful judgment, they're ignoring me, I must have done something wrong. A more neutral, alternative judgment, they are likely busy or they saw it and meant to reply later but forgot. A co-worker makes a curt comment in a meeting. The neutral event, a short sentence was spoken. The painful judgment, they have a problem with me and are trying to undermine me. A more neutral judgment, they are under a lot of pressure and it's affecting their communication style. Training yourself to default to the neutral interpretation first is like applying an emotional antidote. It prevents you from absorbing toxicity that wasn't actually directed at you. It saves you hours of anxiety and preserves the goodwill in your relationships. You begin to navigate the social world with a lighter heart because you are no longer personalizing every single event. You understand that most of what people do is a reflection of their own internal world, their own struggles, their own history. It is not a final verdict on your worth. By seeing events as neutral, you free yourself from the roller coaster of emotions that comes from mistakenly believing that everything is about you, and you create a spaciousness within which truly compassionate and resilient relationships can grow. And so we arrive at the summit, the principle that unites all the others into a single, breathtaking vista of understanding, sympatheia. This profound Stoic concept describes the fundamental interconnectedness of the entire cosmos, the idea that the universe is a single, living, rational being, and every part of it is woven together in a web of mutual interdependence. Think of it as a vast, intricate mobile. If you touch or pull on one piece, no matter how small, the movement reverberates through the entire structure, changing the tension and position of every other part. Nothing exists or acts in true isolation. When we apply this cosmic truth to the intimate scale of our relationships, it ceases to be an abstract philosophy and becomes a practical, moral imperative that redefines the very purpose of our connections with others. At its heart, sympatheia offers a radical redefinition of self-interest. The conventional view pits our well-being against the well-being of others, as if life were a zero-sum game where for me to win, you must lose. We might act selfishly, believing it secures our advantage, or we might help others reluctantly, seeing it as a drain on our own resources. Sympatheia shatters this illusion. It reveals that because we are all part of the same interconnected whole, what is truly good for the whole is by definition good for each of its parts. Therefore, acting against the well-being of another is akin to a hand deliberately injuring the foot. The pain might be localized initially, but the body, the entire system, is weakened, and the hand will inevitably suffer from the resulting lameness. Your flourishing and my flourishing are not separate projects, they are collaborators in the same grand endeavor. This principle makes the cause and effect of our actions vividly clear. When we speak a harsh word to a loved one out of anger, the damage is not contained within them. The resentment it breeds, the erosion of trust, the cold silence that follows, these are poisons that seep back into our own shared environment, into the relationship that is a part of us. We breathe that toxicity just as they do. The sleepless night we cause them becomes our own restless night. Conversely, when we offer patience to a struggling colleague, the support we provide doesn't vanish into a void. It strengthens the team, improves the collective morale, and creates an atmosphere of psychological safety that we ourselves get to benefit from. The encouragement we give returns to us as a more cohesive and supportive work environment. Helping another person is not a subtraction from our own store of happiness. It is an investment in a shared fund of goodwill from which we will all draw interest. This final philosophy is the golden thread that ties together every single Stoic principle we've explored. The dichotomy of control makes sense here. We focus on our own virtuous actions because that is the most direct and powerful way we can contribute to the health of the whole. Justice and recognizing the divine spark in others are simply the active expression of sympatheia, treating people well because they are literally part of our extended self. When we practice deep listening, we are honoring the interconnectedness of our experiences. When we choose to forgive, we are cleansing the shared water we both drink from. Even the acceptance of imperfection is an acknowledgement that every part of the cosmic mobile is inherently flawed, and yet perfectly necessary to the balance of the whole. Amor Fati, the love of fate, is the emotional acceptance of this interconnected reality, embracing even the difficult pulls and tensions as essential to the overall dance. The ultimate goal that sympatheia presents is harmonious coexistence. This is not a bland, conflict-free state where everyone always agrees. Harmony in music is not the same note played repeatedly. It is the beautiful, sometimes tense, resolution of different notes played together. In the same way, harmonious coexistence in our relationships is the dynamic, practiced art of creating something beautiful and resilient out of our differences. It means understanding that our partner's contrasting perspective isn't a threat to our own, but a complementary note that can create a richer chord. It means seeing a disagreement with a friend not as a battle to be won, but as an opportunity to tune our instruments together, to find a new key in which we can both play. Living according to this principle transforms our every interaction from a transaction into a contribution to a shared ecosystem. You begin to see yourself not as an isolated individual navigating a world of others, but as a vital organ within a larger body of humanity. Your choices, your words, and your actions are felt throughout the system. This awareness imbues even the smallest gesture with significance. Holding a door, offering a smile, choosing kindness in a moment of frustration, these are not trivial things. They are conscious acts of tuning the universal instrument, of reducing the friction in the cosmic mobile, of contributing to the grand and eternal project of harmony. This is the summit of Stoic relationship wisdom, the realization that in striving to improve every relationship in your life, you are not just building better connections, you are participating in the sacred work of weaving a stronger, more compassionate, and more beautiful world for us all. So how do we take this grand vision of cosmic connection and actually live it in the rush of our daily routines? The practice of sympatheia becomes real not in sweeping gestures, but in the small, conscious choices we make when interacting with the people right in front of us. It starts with the simple yet profound recognition that every person you encounter is a thread in the same tapestry you are woven into, and the quality of your interaction either strengthens or frays that shared fabric. Consider the difficult colleague, the one who seems perpetually stressed and often responds with curtness or criticism. The conventional reaction is to build a wall, to avoid them, or to mirror their negativity. Sympatheia asks you to see a different story. Instead of viewing them as an isolated source of irritation, you can choose to see them as a person under immense pressure, whose stress is not contained within their cubicle but radiates outward, affecting the morale of the entire team. Your virtuous action, then, is not for them alone. It is for the health of the whole system you are both a part of. This might mean choosing to respond to their sharp email with calm, clarifying questions instead of a defensive retort. It could involve offering a genuine word of appreciation for their work on a recent project, acknowledging their contribution to the shared goal. This isn't about being a doormat, it's about being a thermostat that regulates the emotional temperature for the benefit of all. By refusing to reflect their negativity, you inject a dose of stability into the team's environment, an environment that you yourself have to breathe in every day. Your calmness becomes a quiet, constructive force that subtly encourages a shift away from friction and toward collaboration. This same principle applies with even greater weight within our families, especially in an age of deep political and social divisions. A family gathering can feel like a minefield when a relative holds views that are diametrically opposed to your own. The instinct might be to either avoid the topic entirely, creating a tense silence, or to launch into a debate determined to prove your point. Sympatheia offers a third path, one rooted in the higher value of family harmony. It begins with the humble admission that your perspective, however deeply held, is just one part of a much larger whole. The goal shifts from winning an argument to understanding a person. You might ask your uncle with genuine curiosity, "Can you help me understand what life experiences led you to feel so strongly about that issue?" This question does not mean you agree with him. It means you are acknowledging that his views, like yours, were formed through a lifetime of experiences, fears, and hopes that you have not shared. By seeking to understand, you are honoring the interconnected history you share. You are prioritizing the long-term health of the family system over the short-term satisfaction of being right. This act of empathetic listening might not change his mind, but it can transform a potential battlefield into a space of mutual, if wary, respect. It preserves the connection, ensuring that the family tapestry remains intact even when its threads are of different colors. Living sympatheia consistently naturally expands our sense of identity, fostering what the Stoics called cosmopolitanism, the idea that we are citizens of the world. When you truly internalize that your actions ripple outward, affecting people you will never meet, your circle of concern widens dramatically. Choosing to buy from a company with ethical labor practices is no longer just a consumer choice. It is an acknowledgement of your connection to workers across the globe. Reducing your plastic waste becomes a practical expression of sympatheia with the natural world and future generations. This expansive view dissolves the artificial barriers of nationality, race, and creed, replacing them with a profound sense of shared fate. You begin to see the stranger on the news, the refugee in a distant camp, and the neighbor down the street as fellow participants in the same grand, interconnected community. This doesn't demand heroism, only a consistent, gentle awareness that every act of kindness, patience, or fairness, no matter how small, is a contribution to a collective well-being that ultimately includes your own. It is the ultimate realization that by weaving stronger connections with everyone we meet, we are not just improving our relationships, we are actively crafting a more compassionate and resilient world for all. And so, as we reach the end of our journey through these 25 Stoic principles, a single, powerful thread emerges, connecting each one into a cohesive philosophy for life. Whether it was the dichotomy of control, the practice of Amor Fati, or the wisdom of sympatheia, every idea points back to the same fundamental truth. The most effective and enduring way to improve any relationship is to relentlessly focus on the one thing that is always within our command: our own character, our judgments, and our responses. These are not techniques for manipulating others to behave as we wish. They are disciplines for sculpting ourselves into more virtuous, resilient, and understanding partners, friends, and colleagues. The transformation begins not out there, but in here, in the quiet spaces of our own minds where we choose how to interpret events and how we will show up for the people in our lives. It is crucial to understand that these are not quick fixes or simple life hacks to be tried and discarded. The Stoics themselves framed philosophy not as a weekend workshop, but as a way of living. These 25 points are best thought of as a lifelong gym for the soul, where we return day after day to strengthen our virtues. There will be days when you master the pause and respond with profound patience, and there will be days when you forget everything and react from a place of raw emotion. This is not failure, this is practice. The goal is not perfection, but gradual, consistent progress. Each mindful effort, each time you choose empathy over anger or courage over avoidance, you are not just improving a single interaction. You are building the muscle memory of a wiser, more peaceful character. This is the real work, the work that, over a lifetime, transforms not only our relationships but the very core of who we are. Now, the wisdom of the Stoics must move from your screen into your life, and that begins with a single, deliberate step. I want to issue you a challenge, a practical experiment for the next 7 days. Look back over these philosophies and choose just one. It doesn't have to be the most complex one. In fact, starting simple is often best. Perhaps you choose to practice the discipline of assent, consciously pausing before you judge a loved one's action. Maybe you commit to the active practice of gratitude, writing down one specific thing about a relationship you appreciate each evening. Or you might decide to focus on deep listening, giving your full, undistracted attention to the next person who speaks to you. Carry this single intention with you for the entire week. Notice the opportunities to practice it. Observe how it changes your internal state and the dynamic of your interactions. This is where your journey truly begins. I encourage you to share your experiences in the comments below. Tell us which philosophy you chose and what you discovered. Your insights will create a community of practice, inspiring others with your successes and learning from your challenges. If you found this practical approach to ancient wisdom valuable, consider subscribing to the channel. We are dedicated to bringing you more content that bridges the gap between profound philosophy and everyday living, providing tools to help you build a life of greater peace, purpose, and connection. Thank you for investing this time in yourself and your relationships. The path of a well-lived life is walked one virtuous step at a time.